Welcome back to the Awakening with Kelvin Phiri Podcast, and thank you for joining me for this latest episode in our Bridges to Prosperity series, a space where we dig deeper into the issues that matter for Zambia's future. Before we begin, please note this disclaimer. This episode is based on publicly available facts, legal history, and verifiable statements from official sources. It does not provide legal advice and it is not designed to incite division. The goal of this episode is to inform, to reflect, and to promote respectful dialogue rooted in truth. Now, today's discussion touches on something deeply emotional, highly sensitive, and nationally significant. It's the unfolding public and legal dispute surrounding the burial of former President Edgar Lungu. As many of you know, the former president passed away in South Africa, and what followed has divided opinion across the country and raised serious questions about law, protocol, dignity, and legacy. At the center of this controversy is a very public statement made by the Lungu family lawyer Makebi Zulu during an appearance on Emmanuel Mwambamba's podcast. Speaking on behalf of the family, Zulu strongly opposed President Kaunda Hichilema's attendance at the funeral. His exact words were, and I quote, "If the family feels a dignified send-off for President Edgar Lungu would require that you are absent, give it to them. You will not die if you did that." That statement has since gone viral, igniting national debate and understandably touching raw nerves on both sides of the political aisle. Some have praised the family's boldness, while others have criticized the move as a dangerous precedent that places private emotion above national unity. But behind the headlines and sound bites, what are the real facts? As we record this episode, the matter is no longer just emotional, it is now before the courts. According to SABC News, the full bench of the Gauteng High Court in South Africa has confirmed that it will deliver its ruling this Friday on whether President Lungu's body should be buried privately in South Africa or returned to Zambia for a state funeral and interment at Embassy Park. So while people speculate, the law will soon have its say. But even as we await that court decision, it's important to reflect. Because this moment isn't just about one funeral, it's about what kind of country we are and what kind of country we're becoming. Makebi Zulu argues that the Lungu family should be allowed to define what dignity means in this moment. He said the former president was not just a head of state, but a father, a husband, a grandfather, and the family's grief should not be overshadowed by protocol. That argument resonates with many, and it's true that in Zambian tradition, funerals carry deep personal meaning. However, it's also true that when someone has served as president, they no longer belong to just their family. They belong to the people. Their legacy is national. Their departure becomes a chapter in our shared history, not just a private goodbye. In Zambia, we have a long-standing tradition of laying former heads of state to rest at Embassy Park. President Monawasa, President Banda, and even Dr. Kenneth Kaunda all were buried there. It's not about politics. It's about preserving a national narrative and honoring the institution of the presidency. So the tension here is not just between family and state, it's between emotion and structure, between individual pain and public memory. Then comes the claim from Zulu that Lungu was mistreated, that his benefits were suspended, and now the state wants to impose itself on the funeral. Let's take a moment to look at that. First, President Edgar Lungu died with full presidential immunity. That is an important fact. Unlike Dr. Kaunda, who lost his immunity and was even jailed, or President Banda, who was investigated after office, Edgar Lungu retained his immunity until the very end. He was never stripped of it, and no legal proceedings were brought against him. That's a level of protection and dignity that many past leaders globally don't receive. Second, the issue of benefits. It is true that his retirement benefits were suspended, but that wasn't the personal decision of President Hichilema. That decision was guided by law. The moment President Lungu publicly announced his return to active politics, the law kicked in. Under Zambian statute, a former president who re-enters the political arena forfeits retirement privileges. That law existed long before this moment, so to say he was mistreated is misleading. It creates the impression of victimhood when in fact the events followed the legal framework. Now let's turn the conversation toward leadership, because that's where this matter heads at a deeper level. When Makebi Zulu speaks about leadership, he addresses the states. He says the president should yield to the family's wishes in the name of dignity. But what about the leadership of the Lungu family? This is not just any family. This is the family of a man who once led this nation. A family that still carries national influence. And when you hold that kind of position, even after death, you are held to a different standard. Let's not forget that when Dr. Kaunda passed away, he expressed his wish to be buried next to his wife at their farm. That was his personal desire. But the state, under President Edgar Lungu, overruled that wish and buried Kaunda at Embassy Park. Why? Because the nation came first, because Kaunda's role as founding father outweighed his personal request. That's the example Lungu himself set. Why should the standard be different now? In African culture, funerals are not about the individual. They are about the community. They are the moment where we reflect, reconcile, and find closure. If the family insists that President Hichilema not attend, if they say he is not welcome, what does that tell the watching world? What message does it send to young Zambians about forgiveness, leadership, and national unity? It's not enough to demand reconciliation from the state. We must expect it from the family too, because leadership is not about what you feel, it's about what you choose. And at a time like this, we must choose dignity, not division. So as we wait for the court ruling on Friday, we must also search our hearts as a nation. This is not just a legal moment, it's a moral one. It is possible to honor a grieving family while still respecting state tradition. It is possible to disagree while still showing grace. But what we cannot afford is to let this funeral become a battleground. President Lungu deserves better. Let's remember, death does not end influence, it reveals legacy. And what happens in the next few days will tell us whether we are building a culture of leadership that values humility, consistency, and unity, or one that retreats into blame and bitterness. We owe it to our children and to the future of this country to choose a better way. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Awakening with Kelvin Phiri Podcast, part of our Bridges to Prosperity series. If you found this episode valuable, please share it and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Should the family's wishes take priority over state protocol, or should national symbolism come first? Till next time, stay awake, stay informed, and let's keep building bridges together.